What if there were a truth as monstrously huge as it is monstrously hidden in lies? What if this truth was at the root of some of the biggest problems facing humanity and the world today? Would you want to know? Our hydrological cycle has been hacked and hijacked decades ago. The final phases are in the works as we speak. My name is Raphael O'Neill, aka Nola Butterfly, and the following is a story of how I came to make this shocking discovery, the evidence that validates the bold claim that our weather is hacked, and the necessary retelling of the last 100 years of history to account for the presence of our weaponized weather system as it has sprung up in our midst, in front of our very eyes, and which today puts us in a world of hot water. After surviving Katrina in 2005 and having my heart break during the BP oil spill in the Gulf of Mexico in 2010, I stumbled upon the subject of climate engineering and geoengineering and spent the next 7 years studying the subject. And after writing my children's book, Funny Clouds, A Chemtrail Tale, and taking on trolls and the alleged debunkers face to face, I learned that some of the nuances of the chemtrail argument were, right or wrong, dead ends. I looked at all the narratives, spoke with various chemtrail community leaders, and hosted a podcast that explored the issue away from any gatekeepers. I learned a few things and even made an original discovery that no one else in the world had quite yet put together quite so specifically. First of all, I learned that the big secret all sides of the narrative were missing was that water vapor and not CO2 was the most prominent greenhouse gas on Earth, and that not only are billions spent on covering this up, but that this is and has the most significant impact on climate, according to NASA, who says even small changes in the abundance or locations of clouds could change the climate more than the anticipated changes caused by greenhouse gases, human-produced aerosols, or other factors associated with global change. I also learned that despite being able to prove that planes are dropping chemicals in their fallout, which planes are dropping which chemicals is impossible to prove. This is why the public is allowed to have the chemtrail narrative. It is a safe narrative. Sure, it's on the alternative side of things, but it is very controlled. In fact, not only is it a safe narrative, but it is a desired narrative, because the truth of the matter is that all contrails are chemtrails. Repeat, all contrails are chemtrails. Those contrails are not condensing on pixie dust, darling. Not realizing this neuro-linguistic programming trick of language allows aviation to get away with monstrous pollution, which, if checked, would make it harder for them to get away with the weaponized aspect of the program. I soon realized that Weather War 101 was the only one who could explain and prove where severe weather events came from each and every time a community was taken out by one. While everybody else was talking about chemtrails you couldn't catch and or the HARP facility in Alaska you couldn't get to, this guy, whoever he was behind his masked anonymity, was on the ball. Power plants releasing massive amounts of water vapor, synchronized with other plants, fed into the hydrological system, guided by Doppler radar. After interviewing Weather War 101 and getting some traction exposing his work, I made my own illuminating discovery in the last 2017 hurricane season. That the eye of all the storms go directly into Doppler radar and have for years now. Just how many and for how far back exactly remains to be seen, but the entire 2017 hurricane season followed this discovery's trend. Was this why I was able to interview a former Army captain in charge of gathering supplies and get his testimony that he was ordered to bring as many body bags to New Orleans 11 days before Katrina made landfall? And that he brought 5,226 body bags 8 days prior, even though I didn't know about the storm until 3 days prior to landfall. I'm leaving out name and other pertinent information. And would name
Captain G.
Captain G.
Of the 104th Transportation Division.
And you had deliveries too. What about some of the harder things you delivered?
Well, in 2005, New Orleans was struck by what they call Hurricane Katrina. And at that time, I was stationed in a military base in Georgia. And I found it strange, but 11 days before the storm hit, 11 days, I mean, I don't even think I remember hearing anything being predicted about this storm coming until about 4 or 5 days before the storm. But this emergency conference came in for us to gather up as many body bags. We're going to need about 5,200 body bags. First thing I'm thinking is, oh, fuck. The Iraqis have taken over. There's some big terrorist event that's about to go down on us. And basically, I was correct, but it wasn't. See, my mind was be trained to think that the Arabs, the Muslims, were our terrorists. But today, that particular day, the United States government was the biggest fucking terrorist. And I say this to say I love the military, but I don't love some of the stupid shit that we do. Unnecessary shit we do. But when they ordered the 5,200 body bags and told us that it's going to be for, they said the exact area. They named off certain wards, and they said there's nothing that we're going to be able to do. This is going to be such a major flood that we're going to need these body bags. They wanted us to deliver those. So we get there, we deliver them. But anyways, so we did that, and I found it strange that that was all they wanted us to deliver at that time. They weren't concerned about
supplies, or...
Right. But the day we got there, I also found it strange, although you do have at that time on Poland, it was a naval base. I found it strange that I kept running into, it almost seemed like 3 teams of Navy SEALs. And although as an officer I am privileged to some top security stuff, but I don't think that that naval research base is a training facility of theirs. Though I could be wrong because I have not know much about naval intelligence, but I just found that strange that they were there.
They were in anticipation of something.
That's what I believe.
This was how many days again before the storm?
Now, at that point now, because it takes a while to gather up all of those, and we were told to work 24-hour shifts. So getting those things. So we fulfilled their order within right about 72 hours. So I would say this now marks us at about 8 days before the storm.
So 8 days before the storm, 5,226
is what we did.
5,226 body bags were delivered to New Orleans in anticipation to the storm, they were saying?
They didn't tell us why they needed them.
They didn't tell you why.
I mean, yes, you're correct. Okay, at first, right. But then that's when we got to New Orleans, that's when No, wait, the other way around. You're right.
No, you tell me. I don't know.
That, yes, we were told that Hurricane Katrina was going to be they told us a Category 5.
Okay, that was when you got to New Orleans, they told you that.
No, that was, you remember the first briefing.
The first briefing.
So we already knew why we were bringing
Category
it.
5.
Right.
But why New Orleans and not some other part in the Gulf? Or is that just where it was going to land? Or how were they so sure that it was coming to New Orleans 8 days out?
New Orleans was going to be the hardest hit.
That's interesting
That they
because
could predict that by, they said, by the satellite they were using with a 210% accuracy of their prediction.
was this also why a source in the military in Texas told me, before the general public was told about Harvey's existence, that he was told to pack his bags before the storm was even a tropical depression? After getting a heads up for Harvey, I discovered the eye of Irma going directly into Doppler radar when making landfall and following this trend all the way inland. I followed Nate, Maria. They, too, followed Doppler, eye for eye. Our team went back to Katrina and discovered that it, too, was Doppler bait. At least 5 Doppler radars in a row, in 3 states. This, along with the guidance of chemtrails to manage the fronts, is how daily weather is made and has been for years now. As incredible and certainly crazy as it all sounds, this is where our research has taken us. This trend surpasses tremendous statistical odds, and if it continues to prove to hold up during the rest of our research, will be the Achilles heel that all the gatekeepers will want to guard against the most. We feel that there is another component at play to create and direct monstrous stream over the oceans, but as of yet cannot be sure of what exactly, though it may employ satellite or drones outfitted with the lasers of some type, or a steam-making ship. But I doubt it's land-based. However, while on land, the hurricanes interact with radar just like the other weather events, except that the hurricane steering is the most damning. What does the meteorological community have to say about all this, you may ask? Great question. The answer is, unfortunately, nothing. At least to the public. After trying to get my meteorologist to answer questions about chemtrails for years, she finally offered to run a story on albedo modification and contrail pollution after I asked her to actually define the conditions that allowed a contrail to form versus those required for it to persist and form jet cirrus. She admitted that she can't. At least, she offered to run the story until the woman at the National Weather Service and NOAA she referred me to answer my questions she couldn't, told her to can the story. I learned from them both that there is nobody at the meteorological level that is expected to tell the public the truth about artificial clouds or weather. In fact, the NOAA reports to the World Meteorological Organization that no weather modification projects were conducted in the United States, even though the World Meteorological Organization states in the same report that hydrological companies have been at the cloud seeding game the longest, 50 years, ongoing. I asked the lady why the lack of reporting by the NOAA, and she said they were not obligated by law to report on activities publicly. I said, y'all did in the past when you were not obligated, so what changed? Crickets. I asked, whose job was it to notify the public of artificial weather? Crickets. I asked, why is Doppler appearing to steer the storms? Crickets. I have found that the best way to advance the narrative is to not make claims, but to see what the official narrative says and to hold it accountable to itself, to see if it holds any water and make waves that way. Since the contrail chemtrail geoengineering narrative was too far gone into plausible deniability for too long, it is now too late to make a point of it either way, because since 2017, it has been made legal for national security issues. The urgency of global warming or climate change being the key that finally unlocked this legal right. But the realization of 2 major basic facts pointed the way and unlocked the door to me asking the right set of questions, leading to my total realization of the full-scale weather manipulation program that is going on today. These 2 major emissions were, number 1, that CO2 and not H2O is the most prominent greenhouse gas. Greenhouse gases led by CO2 are leading contributors to climate change drivers. Okay, this is just to document what comes up. IPCC greenhouse gases. The first ones are the ones with CO2, Does this show greenhouse gas emissions by sector? CO2 from fossil fuel. Where's the water? Where's H2O, which is 80 to 90% of the greenhouse gases? Okay. CO2 from fossil fuel. Shares of global anthropogenic GHG emissions. Why are contrails not on here? I promise I'm not making it up. Water vapor is... I've got to find a graph here that talks about water vapor. Carbon dioxide. I mean, this is just Google Images, so this is showing me all the articles that would... Carbon dioxide is the big bulk here. Am I a liar? I must be a liar. I mean, how can the largest carbon dioxide... All these maps are showing carbon dioxide as the most prominent carbon dioxide. Wow. And yet, we're just going to change this. Let's add water vapor. If you look for it, they can't hide it from you because it is a scientific fact. Oh yeah, here we go. Water vapor. CO2, other. See that? And yet, NASA says, even small changes in the abundance or location of clouds could change the climate more than the anticipated changes caused by greenhouse gases, human-produced aerosols, or other factors associated with global change. NASA. The reply given by skeptics as to why CO2 gets the credit for being the leading greenhouse gas, which doesn't hold any water either, is because allegedly CO2 has anthropogenic causes, or can be affected by man, whereas water vapor cannot. That is the biggest lie. The biggest lie states that man is not capable of changing the water vapor content or exchanges between the Earth's various surfaces and the atmosphere, except as a secondary result of increasing CO2 levels, which then increase the heat and thus, and only then, is able to evaporate more water. But it turns out there are other sources of anthropogenic water vapor releases, and major ones at that. Omission number 2 would yield to the discovery of those as well. Number 2, another major omission. At the heart of the contrail versus chemtrail debate is whether or not those contrails are forming on chemicals or ice crystals. That argument misses the fact that it is both. However, according to the scientific community, ISSRs, ice supersaturated regions, are the number one determining factor that yields the probability of having contrails persist, no matter what airline is employed. My team and I's own findings concurred with that claim. However, ISSRs were missing from the glossary of meteorological terminology the NOAA puts out, despite being the simplest explanation of why contrails would persist. Why? Also, increases in ISSRs are credited for the rise of contrail persistence and the given excuse for why we have the removal of skies. But the funny thing is that there is not supposed to be greater amounts of moisture at higher altitudes than there are at lower ones, because the further up you go, the less air there's supposed to be. 4. I was trained adjunct Air Force by the National Weather Service. Now, the technology that we used was 40 years ahead of anything that was sitting in people's homes. And that's par for the course with the military. At each stratum of the atmosphere, which could be 1,000 feet, 5,000 feet, 500 feet. It all depends on what stratum they're looking at. All right?
It's very inexact science, believe me. We did not have the red phone to God. The only place that you can predict the possibility of humidity is at base level, which is usually from 0 to 4,000 feet in the air. And that is with 20% accuracy rate.
Okay. So these are not readings from balloons that get an actual.
No, no, you can't get relative humidity from a balloon. I never did. We never did.
Okay. And is there any chance that the technology might have changed since?
Yes.
So there's no way really to monitor the humidity, and you are also saying it's not possible to have humidity that much, like more humidity on the upper atmosphere than on the lower atmosphere.
No,
What?
it's not possible. Because the farther up you get, the less air there is.
And
the
so
less
so what?
ionization nuclei, which is exactly what it's dust particles. It's anything that a water molecule can attach to in order to form a cloud. And I'm going to tell you something. None of the clouds that I see on a daily basis are anything like clouds. They're all fake clouds.
Yeah.
Can't even find the bases on a stratus level. They all have this icky goo that comes out from the bottom of every single freaking cloud. I can't tell you where the bases are of a CRQ. I don't know what level. Like right now, I'm looking outside and I'm trying to determine the base level, which would be my report, as in 5 scattered, meaning 5,000 scattered, 5,000 feet in elevation, scattered. I can't find a bottom.
This is where Weather War 101 comes in, and my interview is available for the world to see. I recommend it under Weather War 101 interview by Raphael O'Neill. And what I learned blew my own mind, despite the fact that I'd been following climate engineering along its harrowing paths, twists, and turns for 7 years already. What I learned is that it's not just some cloud seeding, not just some weather modification here and there, but it was indeed the hacking of the entire hydrological cycle on a level deeper and more interconnected than I had hoped to learn myself. It was at this time that I made a few discoveries of my own. First of all, one day, Doppler radar was down. Product missing. This was a saved website. See my little star here. Product missing. Click here for the KLX status update. This service is no longer available in accordance with the National Weather Service Change Notice 1616 WeatherGov. And raw data. Please see weather.gov and raw data. Oh, so it's funny. So apparently KLIX is down, which is why you can't access the data on on that one website that I captured earlier. But it's also one of the days that's like the foggiest. So when there is no activity or a lack of activity, moisture is able to roll in. So all of these little microwaves are propelling outward the moisture, really creating a drought, creating an lack of precipitation. Not a lot of activity here in our Slidell one. Of course, what really got me going and tying things together was the realization during Irma that, oh my gosh, yes indeed, the eye of the storm was going directly into Doppler radar, where I then correctly predicted where the next two strike points would be, aligned with the Doppler radar, and how I've been able to predict the landfalls of the hurricanes ever since. Look at the eye of the hurricane going right over Doppler radar. Imminent landfall. And look, this is not a hurricane. This is a land-based weather event. Going right. Look at this. Right over it. Look at this. It's going this way. Yeah, hey, Doppler. Oh, yeah, we're just telling you what's going on. What a coinky-dink. What a freaking coinky-dink. Your party's over. Get the word out, people. If you don't think this is enough information, then look at what all we've been saying. We're seeing these storms coming over the next rad. Over the next rad. Over the next rad. 10 miles from making landfall means that the American landfall of this hurricane is imminent. It will happen in the lower Florida Keys, not in Key West, but another one of the... All right, here we go, guys. The storm is being guided, okay, from next rad to next rad. The eye is going right towards the next rad centers. Here we go. Gonna have to re-add that to the edit. Let's see if we just keep ping-ponging from next rad to next rad. So far, every storm takes place over next rad Doppler radar. No meteorologist has noticed? None? Here we go. Whoop, 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 whoop. Yeah, got a little beam. Suck it up, baby. Suck it up. Yes, I'm coming, Daddy. I'm coming, Daddy. Mama in Africa says hi. Because you know these came out of power plants in Africa. Look at Weather War 101. I don't have time to redo people's work, but... And here we go. We have another one. Coming right over next rad. This is the third next rad in a row. They are going from next rad to next rad. This is Georgia. What date? September 11th. 6, 7, 8. It's like projecting into the day, I guess, or what? To the morning. That's what they see it doing in the next few hours. Wow. We have a third one, guys. We have a freaking third one. Implicating Doppler radar is a tall claim to make, And in order to justify it, I decided to go backwards in history and retrace when the origins of such a monstrous program could have possibly snuck in, and what other radar evidence could I gather to prove that I was not indeed mistaken in this hypothesis. What follows is worthy of rewriting history, or rather, simply assimilating it as it is, neglected in its totality. Please join us again for our next episode as we continue to explore the history of the last 100 years, the history of weaponized weather and weaponized Doppler radar. The history of this world of hot water.